Testing. Where's my gavel? We'll call our meeting to order, please. This is a Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District. Today's December 19, 2019. Would you call the roll, please, Ms. Clerk?
Director Hart? Here. Hartman? Here. Adam? Lavanino? Here. Sierra? Here. Clark? Perotti? Here. Rubalcaba? Here. Mosby? Here. Patino? Here. Toussaint? Williams? And Chair Murillo.
Here. Thank you very much. We'll do our Pledge of Allegiance now. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item C on our agenda is a closed session. Ms. Legal Counsel, would you tell us what that's about, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have one item scheduled for a closed session. It's a public employee performance evaluation under Government Code 54957B1, and it's for the Air Pollution Control Officer.
Okay, so we'll adjourn to closed session. We'll be back. Thank you. We'll call our meeting back to order, please. And I'll turn it over to our legal counsel to report out from closed session.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The board met in closed session for the public employee performance evaluation for the air pollution control officer and took no reportable action.
Very good. We'll move on to our minutes. Did everyone get a chance to take a look at them? And is there a motion to approve our minutes? That was from Mr. Hart, Director Hart, and a second from Director Hartman. Any other discussion? Thank you very much, Director Perotti. Do we need to do a roll call vote if there's not a board member in Santa Barbara? So I can just say all in favor. Everyone ready? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And one abstention from Galita. Thank you. We'll move on to administrative items. Would anyone like to pull an item for discussion?
I would.
Go ahead, Director Lavanino.
Thank you. I'd like to look at E1 just for a moment. I was just curious about.
That would be the notice of violation report.
Correct. You want to read that in? And then I'll.
Sure. Item E1 is to receive and file the summary of notices of violation issued and penalty revenue received during the months of October and November 2019.
Thank you. The one I was concerned about, well, I just kind of wanted to get some more detail on is it Microdyne? I just noticed that they had about $130,000 in fines and just kind of wanted to know, hadn't seen that name before, and very substantial issue, so I know it must have been very serious and kind of would like to know more about it.
I would like Caitlin McNally, the manager of compliance division, to come and provide some insight to the violation and where we are now working with that company.
Ms. McNally, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Murillo and board members. Caitlin McNally, manager of compliance division. And so I believe you're speaking about the 4 violations in the October report for Microdyne. So just a little bit of information. The 4 NOVs actually spanned between 2016 and 2018. So there were multiple years of violation, which we counted separate offenses, although they're identified in some instances in a single violation. And the violations were mainly for exceeding their permitted emission limits in multiple years, as well as failing to conduct source testing, and in one case, failing to submit the annual report on time. And so just to give you some a little bit of background, this is something that we have seen as I identified over multiple years. We have been working with them, and we have seen a reduction in their exceedances, although they were still exceeding. So, for example, 11427 is the largest of those NOVs and was for 2 years, 2016 and 2017, and you can see that amount was very large. However, 11437 at the bottom of those list of Microdyne NOVs was for 2018, and that is a much smaller amount at 6,600. So they are improving. In addition, since these violations were issued and settled, we have been working with them to get them back into compliance. They have an incomplete authority to construct permit, which as soon as it is complete and is issued, we believe there should be no more exceedances. However, that doesn't change the past, so we still haven't seen how they operated in 2019, because the year is not yet done. So there could be possible future violations that you see in your board reports. However, we are confident that 2020 will look better.
Great. One last question also, and so I noticed HVI Cat Canyon, which is frequent flyer on this report, but it seemed like they were even more so than normal. I know they're in bankruptcy. I guess my question is, we're still inspecting. Are they doing anything? I mean, are we just inspecting, writing up, or is there any corrective action that they're taking anywhere along the way, or kind of give me a heads up on that?
So the violations in the report were based on our review of the 2018 annual report. And so that was for deficiencies of things that they did not report or did not conduct during 2018 before bankruptcy was filed. So we were documenting those violations. We are still inspecting them. I think it's, we're still finding some violations, but not, well, it's a bit early to tell, I think, since bankruptcy was just filed less than 6 months ago. And we are working with the bankruptcy trustee on compliance and permitting moving forward.
Thank you. Will you need to vote on that separately? Does anyone else have something from our administrative agenda? Do I have a motion to accept that section?
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. That was Sierra Patino. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The
And
next
just to confirm,
item-
there's no one in Santa Barbara for public comment.
I don't
Oh,
think
doesn't
so.
sound like it. Thank you.
So we're moving to the director's report, Madam Clerk. Do you need to read that paragraph? No. So, Ms. Arlen Janae, please.
All right, thank you. I have 4 items I'd like to bring to your board's attention. The first relates to CARB's action. December 12th was an exciting day for the Air District. The California Air Resources Board held a hearing and approved the designation of Santa Barbara County as attainment for the state ozone standard. Woohoo! Yeah. Sarah, I have an image that I wanted to show. Aha, there we are, highlighted with yellow. I think this is a really great image to make sure we are all familiar with. The air districts surrounding us, they have a hatchet line. You can't really see it, but it's what looks a little busier in the graphic here. Those are all non-attainment areas. We're definitely a standalone air district that's been able to accomplish a significant milestone for the state of California. 50 years in the making to get us to where we are today. The other areas in the state, you can see up in the northern part of the state, those areas are in attainment. It's kind of the lighter gray coloring. Those have much fewer population and industrial sources by comparison. So it's just pretty darn remarkable that what we've been able to do with the amount of individuals who are living in our area, the amount of sources of emissions that we have, that we've been all able to accomplish this milestone. So we look forward to the actions of the California Office of Administrative Law to finalize the designation. That's likely not to officially take place until sometime in 2020. We did issue a news release on the 12th of December and received strong coverage of the media. We actually just saw, I think it was in the Carpinteria Valley News, the Coastal News, that they published the article as well. And they also included in their press release our beautiful graph that shows the downward trend of exceedances. So that was nice to hear. We will be talking a little bit more about ozone planning later during our discussion items. Since our designation isn't final until Office of Administrative Law takes action, we're still required to do our triennial update to the ozone plan. So you'll hear about that next. All right, the next item. The City of Carpinteria's letter on the Air Pollution Control District's role in regulating and monitoring cannabis cultivation. On December 2nd, we received the letter from the mayor of the City of Carpinteria that was addressed to our chair, and it was distributed to all of you via email. This is the second letter that was provided to the Air District by the city. I have discussed this issue with Dave Derflinger, the city manager, and I provided him with information and references regarding the limitations of Air District Authority on this issue, specifically providing him references to the California Health and Safety Code that restricts our ability from regulating agricultural operations. In addition, I also provided Mr. Derflinger with the information we received on the chemical configuration that's associated or used in Ecozorb CNB 100. This is the material that's used in the vapor phase solution for local odor abatement systems. Upon review of the confidential information we received from Ecozorb, my staff has confirmed that none of the ingredients in the Ecozorb CNB 100 are considered toxic air contaminants as defined by the state. We made that information available to the city and also to the county and public health department. We continue to work with the public health department, and we urge the California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, OEHA is the acronym, it's always fun when you get to say that, to provide additional input on the health effects. That's the agency at the state that reviews all toxic air contaminants and the health implications associated with those sources. So we continue to work with them to make sure that they continue to evaluate this issue and provide guidance statewide. As you know, Santa Barbara definitely is in the tip of the sword as it relates to cannabis activity. And when I bring this item up before CAPCOA, there aren't any other air districts in the state that are getting as much concern as what we've seen down in the South County portion of our region. All right.
Ms. Arlen Janae, can I suggest that you and I perhaps meet with the mayor of Carpinteria, and we would invite our state representatives if this seems to be in the purview of the state government, and maybe someone from county public health, just to be responsive to the letter, if they wanted to have a meeting, me as chair, you as the
Yeah.
officer, and the state representatives.
I can arrange that follow-up.
Does that sound like a good idea? Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Moving on, this Monday, we held a public workshop on Draft Rule 364, Refinery, Fence Line, and Community Air Monitoring Requirement. It was held at our office in Santa Barbara. This draft rule is a requirement of Assembly Bill 1647 to implement fence line air monitoring and community air monitoring associated with emissions from the Santa Maria Asphalt Refinery. It was identified as part of the rule. The workshop was attended by representatives of the company as well as their consultants who work for the refinery. Written comments on our draft rule are due on January 7th. We have tentatively set to bring this rule to our Community Advisory Council in late January and to your board for consideration in March. And that's obviously dependent on the conversations and comments we receive and our ability to incorporate and address those comments so we can dock it for the CAC as well as your board. And lastly, I have to step away just for 1 second. I'm gonna cry. Here you go, Sarah.
There's no crying in air pollution control.
Buckle up, cowgirl. Okay. I am sad to announce that on January 10th, Sarah will be leaving the Air District to seek out other opportunities in Reno, Nevada. She has worked for the district for 10 years. She started out as an office technician and quickly moved on to the executive assistant position, board clerk position, where she served the district for the last 9.5 years. I've been very fortunate. I was very fortunate when I started that you were here to help me find my way around the office, and I was able to work closely with you over the past 4 years. She is exceptional in her position. She has in-depth knowledge of the district, our internal processes, our policies and procedures, everything related to the procedures of operating the board, clerking this board, as well as the hearing board. I especially appreciate her calm demeanor and her logical approach. She is a great tracker of all rules and regulations, and she keeps me within my lane. We will greatly miss her, and we wish her the best of luck and happiness into her next chapter. Thank you, Sarah.
I'd like to add a compliment to you as well for helping us maintain order in our meetings and being so organized, and good luck with where you're going. Would anyone else like to say anything, or should I ask if you'd like to say a few words? Ms. Hunt.
No, I just want to say thank you. It's been really incredible working with you all, and it's been challenging at times, but I've learned a lot, and I've really grown as a person. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Don't forget us and stay in touch. No, people move away.
The nightmares will go away.
But I think we might have a public comment from Santa Barbara on this section. If our TV services would. Mr. Mahoney,
Thank you.
go ahead, please.
I'm here for public comment, Madam Chairman, for public comment.
Well, I guess that's the next one. Did you have anything on the director's report? Did you see all the items that we talked about? No.
Yes, no comment on those.
Is anyone else there with you, Mr. Mahoney?
Mr. Lee Moldaver?
Okay, and he's for public comment as well? Do you mind
Yes.
asking him?
Yes, Mr. Moldaver, public comment.
Would you
We're
repeat
the
that?
only ones here today.
Okay. So,
Yes, two public comment.
Would you stand by for a moment, sir? Are there any questions from
Certainly.
us up here regarding the director's report or any of those items? No. Then we'll close that item and we'll go to public comment. Okay, now Mr. Mahoney, thank you so much.
Certainly, it just we're the only people here, so we're doing the best we can. So Timothy Mahoney, Southern California Gas Company, closing out the year, wanted to give you an update on where gas companies coming from. We have a very good new product. The human waste stream produces renewable natural gas or biogas from essentially 3 areas. Wastewater plants, those are sewer plants, dairies, not so much around our area, but in the Central Valley where there's a lot of dairy production, and then the dumps or your landfills. These natural 3 areas here create methane. So my company is going out there to these 3 areas and capturing that methane, which right now just goes into the atmosphere, creating greenhouse gases. We're going to capture that natural reoccurring methane, that biogas, odorize it. If it needs to be cleaned, we'll clean it and then put that in the pipeline. So there again, the more renewable natural gas you use, you're cleaning up the environment and the air. If you take that renewable natural gas, that biogas, and you put it into a 18-wheeler truck, heavy-duty trucking, then that truck doesn't need diesel fuel or other fuels. It can run off that clean burning renewable natural gas. So you kind of cash the paycheck twice, if you will, and save the planet twice by doing so. The closest renewable natural gas fueling station is on Prado Road in San Luis Obispo. Our goal is to expand those filling facilities to have more of those. And then as far as the landfills go, Tahiguas has one, and the landfill in Santa Maria has been successfully capturing biogas for years, sending that over to Marion Hospital where they run a natural gas-fired microturbine to create electricity. So these are kind of the future technologies which are coming out, which are going to improve the air quality, and I just wanted to be able to share that with you, so thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Mr. Moldaver?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the District Board. I'm Lee Moldaver, a member of the Air District Advisory Committee, and I had 2 or 3 linked comments. First, this is a truly remarkable month on which to end the year. As Director Genet pointed out, this is the first time in the modern history of the county that we will be designated as in full attainment for all 4 state and federal clean air standards. And this is a line of, as you all know from many other things, what they call maintenance of effort that goes back to Director English, Director Ryerson, Director Allard, Director Dressler, Colonel Van Mullum, and now Director Genet, and all of the staff and all of the elected officials that have worked to get us to that point. So that's really, really remarkable. The second thing is, of course, that a regular visitor to Santa Barbara was the late Bill Ruckelshaus, a good friend of the Reagan family, who was the founding director of the U.S. EPA, who was first charged with carrying out the Clean Air Act around the United States. And I just wish he got to within 6 weeks of living long enough to see us reach full attainment. When something this good happens after so much effort, it's usually not by accident. And one of the reasons that we're able to reach attainment and have your district working as a real team with open ears and open hearts is the woman who's sitting right in front of you, Sarah, who is about to leave. She is a woman, as you know, when she stands up, of height, but also as a public servant of real stature. And she has added distinction and insight and patience to every director she's worked with. And I know as a member of the advisory committee, there isn't a single regulated business that wasn't in touch with the director's office with a question or a request, that if she was in town, would not get back to them with information or an answer within 24 or 48 hours. That's how good she was serving the district and the people of this county and all our elected officials. So when I heard she was leaving, I was hoping that either the governor or the president had her in mind for some sub-cabinet position. So I say congratulations to the people of Nevada, but thank you, Sarah, for an amazing career here and a job really well done.
Thank you, Mr. Moldaver. I don't see any other public commenters in Santa Barbara. Anyone here in this room? No? So we'll close public comment and go to our next item. Madam Clerk?
The next item is H1. This is to adopt a resolution authorizing the district to establish and implement the Landscape Equipment Electrification Fund pilot program.
Very good.
All right, we're very excited to be here today. This is something that we've received many calls from as far as the concerns, and it's primarily been leaf blowers, but we didn't want to focus just on one piece of equipment. And today it's exciting to have Emily Waddington provide a presentation. She's an air quality specialist in our planning division, and this is her inaugural presentation before your board. So take it away.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Maria and Board Directors. As Aaron mentioned, my name is Emily Waddington. I'm here to present to you today the proposed Landscape Equipment Electrification Fund, or LEAF pilot program.
There we go.
There you go. First, I'll be going over some background about funding and landscape equipment emissions. Then I'll get into proposed program details, recommendations, and then I can take questions at the end. Funding for this program would come from $100,000 from the Clean Air Fund, which was approved by our board in March 2019 and which was included in the district's 2019-20 fiscal year budget. The Clean Air funds come from notice of violation revenue, and this fund allows the district to implement and or support projects that do not meet traditional grant program guidelines, such as the Carl Moore program guidelines. We chose to look at using these funds for landscaping equipment due to community input. Landscape equipment emits a variety of air pollutants, including ozone precursors such as VOC and NOx, carbon monoxide, PM 2.5, which is very fine particulate matter, black carbon, and toxic air contaminants that are normally found in gasoline and diesel emissions. It's surprising to learn just how much pollution landscape equipment emits. 1 hour of lawnmower use makes the same amount of smog-forming emissions as driving a passenger car 300 miles. That's from LA to Vegas. And 1 hour of leaf blower use makes the same amount of smog-forming emissions as driving a passenger car 1,100 miles. So that's all the way from LA to Denver. If I can direct your attention to the graph on the lower right-hand side of the screen, you can see in red the emissions due to SOAR, or small off-road engines, which is the majority landscape equipment, and in blue, emissions due to light-duty passenger cars. You can see that statewide emissions from SOAR are expected to surpass those from light-duty passenger cars in the early 2020s and double them by 2031. What are the effects of this pollution? There are regional impacts due to ozone or smog formation. There are neighborhood impacts. In the past 3 years, the district has received 78 complaints in regards to operation of landscape equipment. And there are health impacts to the operators of the equipment who are breathing in the fumes. Because of this, 9 air districts in the state have adopted programs to incentivize use of electric landscape equipment. CARB, or the California Air Resources Board, completed a survey in the last year looking at use of household and commercial landscape equipment. On the lower left-hand side of the screen is household use of gasoline equipment in red and electric equipment in blue. You can see that for the most part, household landscape equipment is already a majority electric. The last column named Other LNG refers to other miscellaneous lawn and garden equipment that weren't included in the other categories. On the other hand, displayed on the lower right-hand side of the screen is commercial use of gasoline equipment in red and electric in blue for licensed landscape businesses in the state. You can see that commercial users of this equipment have been much slower to adopt electric technology. We reached out to multiple landscape businesses in the county, and many of them expressed concerns about the performance and battery longevity of electric landscape equipment. However, electric equipment and battery technology have been steadily improving over the years, and we feel that if commercial businesses had an incentive to trial electric equipment, they would be more likely to adopt it. Recently, the City of Ojai Public Works Department replaced their entire landscaping fleet with electric equipment. They received $60,000 in funding from the Clean Air Fund through the Ventura County APCD, and with that, were able to purchase 25 pieces of equipment, 24 batteries, and 21 chargers. Workers have been using the electric equipment for over a year now, and I just attended a ceremony last week in Ojai to celebrate the success of their program. The operators report no noticeable work production differences and saw some great benefits, including 78 tons of air pollutants averted annually, less noise, no maintenance, and long-term cost savings due to not needing to purchase fuel and maintain the equipment. The proposed pilot program's goals are to improve public health by accelerating adoption of electric landscape equipment ahead of regulatory requirements, address the public's concern about emissions from gasoline and diesel-powered landscape equipment, and this will be a pilot program to inform a potential expanded program for the board's consideration in the future. As the program is proposed, we would offer incentives to purchase electric landscape equipment via voucher, specifically for commercial users of this equipment. Focusing on commercial equipment rather than household would be the most effective in reducing pollution for the reasons described previously. Entities that would be eligible for a voucher through the pilot program include commercial landscape businesses who would operate the equipment at least 50% of the time within the county, public agencies within the county with in-house landscape maintenance, and public or private schools or school districts in the county with in-house landscape maintenance, including universities. The maximum voucher amount would be $10,000 per entity, and with that, they could purchase whatever type of eligible equipment they would like, including ride-on and walk-behind mowers, leaf blowers and vacuums, edgers, trimmers, chainsaws, and pole saws. The voucher would cover up to 60% of the purchase price for this eligible equipment, along with 100% of the purchase price for batteries and chargers, limited to one additional battery or charger per piece of equipment purchased through the program. How the pilot program would operate from the applicant's point of view is they would apply to the program with the types and cost estimates of the electric equipment they wish to purchase. We would review their application and issue them a voucher with a maximum amount. The applicant would then purchase the equipment, and they'd be free to purchase it from any retailer or manufacturer so they can find the best equipment for their specific business needs. The applicant would then submit paperwork, including receipts to the district, and we would reimburse the applicant. The program will also include an educational component for how and where to properly dispose of the old equipment and how to operate leaf blowers to minimize air quality impacts. Staff recommendations for the board include board action to adopt resolution to authorize creation of the LEAF pilot program. Upon board action, we would begin countywide outreach, including finalizing application and outreach materials, launching with press releases and outreach to eligible entities. We propose to begin accepting applications the first week of March 2020, with additional outreach activities as the response warrants. Thank you, and at this time, we can take any questions.
Questions for Ms. Waddington? Is that you, Mr. Cart? Director Hart.
Well, thank you very much for this great program and presentation. We're very excited to see this coming. And I know that we all have had a number of questions from constituents and others who are interested in making this transition, so this is really going to help. But seeing the information that you presented about how significant the emissions are from these equipment, it just occurs to me that why has the state at the Air Resources Board level not moved into this space and done regulations at the state level? And then I guess the second question is, what are the other air districts that you mentioned are doing incentive programs? What is the scale and scope of those efforts?
Yes, so the state, through the California Air Resources Board, is planning to adopt regulations in the future for lawn and garden equipment. Specifically, they have a goal that by 2031, they're going to enact regulation to stop the sale of all gasoline equipment. So after that time, you would only be able to purchase electric equipment. They wouldn't be taking any equipment away. And there are, of the 9 programs that other air districts have in the county for lawn and garden equipment, 3 of them focus on commercial scale. So we did take a look at what those programs are doing when we designed the proposed program for our district. So they're proposing the similar equipment types that we're proposing for the program. Some of them had a little bit more funding to work with, but our program is pretty comparable to what they're doing.
Well, thank you very much. It is surprising that it would be so long in the future for CARB to have a regulation, but I guess they're moving at the pace that they are. So thank you for that.
Was that you, Director Hartman? Go ahead, please.
Yes, well, again, thank you for this good presentation. I had a question about how we will decide with the applicants coming in. Is it a first come, first serve, or how will we make a choice given our limited resource?
As the program is designed now, it would be first come, first served. We are proposing to save 50% of the funds for commercial businesses rather than public agencies and school districts, to sort of give them an opportunity to get their applications in on time, since they often don't have the same resources that a public agency or school district has to apply to grant programs like this. And then if we aren't seeing a lot of interest from commercial landscapers after our work plan says after 3 months, we could open that 50% funding up to public agencies and school districts as well.
And we have an extensive outreach program that we're going to be reaching out well in advance of the day when we open the grant funding. We want to make sure all of the school districts, all of the commercial businesses, and the public agencies are aware of this program and how to apply in advance and able to answer their questions. And then as far as the start date, I don't recall the exact date. It's in March. Is it
We have March 3rd.
March 3rd is our start date, and we're not, typically when we have a first come, first serve, it's like 12:01 in the morning. We're going to wait until business starts, so I think it's 9 a.m. when we're going to start receiving the applications.
Director Mosby?
Yeah, to answer Director Hart's one of his questions was, why is it taking so long? The technology is just finally getting there, the battery component and such. I've been converting some of my landscape component over, and went from the blowers were plug-in with cords and cables, and now the batteries are at the time and advancing on it. Anybody using a blower, the blowers are just as good or better. There's other components that you guys have you talked about before. One was the spill component that doesn't happen with the electric component. There's also, you don't have to go, a lot of these guys with the blowers are 100%. You hear them whining all the time. They're just revved up all the way. The electric component, you realize you can do the same with less. You don't have to have that full power. And the other thing that happens is you can use the electric components in places where you couldn't use the gas components, tight areas. Heck, you could even come inside here if the leaves blew inside the doors here, and you could blow the doors out, blow the leaves out the doors, things that you couldn't do with gas. So blowers, hedge trimmers, line trimmers, you can make it work. The mowers, I haven't seen the advancement yet. When you have some of the larger capacities, I just went to the city of Buellton and bought a big 24 horsepower lawnmower the other day, but you couldn't find that. You can't find that with the electric. Is really not all there yet, and it's definitely not for the price point. I guess you could hook up a Tesla on it or something like that, but it hasn't really advanced that I've seen feasibly. But I've had the city of Lompoc convert to electric on blowers and stuff where they can, because it's easier. You put it in the back of a vehicle and you don't have the gas can everywhere spilling, and they can jump out and they can. So there's efficiency components to there as well that you can market and sell it for that work. I've got a couple of units in the back of my truck right now that if they were gas, I couldn't have in the compartment of the vehicle. So there are a lot of other bonuses. It's not in the back where it can get stolen. It's just behind the seat. So there are other advantages.
Thank you. Mr. Lavanino.
Thank you. I was just curious. I wonder what we at the county do, because this is something I think we probably need to be. We're probably gross polluters. Yeah. I had no idea the emissions were what they are. So, we're chasing all these other things when something that looks like a pretty easy fix once the technology gets there. But, it always bothers me that we're always out nitpicking at somebody else, but then we don't take care of our own business. So this will be something I'll be going to our general services also and finding out what exactly we're doing. And if we're falling short, then we need to pick up the pace as well.
And we can't let Ojai show us up. So we better get busy. Any other questions or comments? Anyone from Santa Barbara? So we need to adopt a resolution authorizing the district to establish and implement this plan, this program. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll say it.
That was Parodi Mosby. Ms. Hartman?
Well, just more discussion following on what Director Lavanino said. I wonder if we could get a report back from all our jurisdictions on what we're doing.
Would you like the Air District to coordinate that?
If you're willing or have the ability. Yeah.
We can do that, yeah.
Great.
Something else, Mayor Parodi?
Sense some shaming coming.
Okay. If we're ready to vote, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that carried unanimously. And H2, Madam Clerk?
Item H2 is to consider recommendations as follows. A, hold a public hearing to receive public testimony on the 2019 ozone plan and the addendum to the final environmental impact report for the 2010 Clean Air Plan. And B, adopt a resolution containing the following action items. First, find that prior to approving the 2019 ozone plan, board members have reviewed and considered the addendum to the final environmental impact report for the 2010 Clean Air Plan and the final environmental impact report for the 2010 Clean Air Plan. Second, adopt the California Environmental Quality Act findings, including that subsequent environmental review is not required because none of the conditions in CEQA guidelines section 15162 have occurred. Third, adopt the 2019 ozone plan. And fourth, authorize the control officer to transmit the 2019 ozone plan to the California Air Resources Board and do all other acts necessary and proper to obtain approval of the 2019 ozone plan.
Thank you.
And I bet Sarah's so happy she won't have to do that again. I'm just going to hand the baton directly over to Molly Pearson and Tim Mitro, who will be presenting to you on this item.
Thank you.
There we go. Good afternoon, Chair Murillo, members of the board. Today I'll be talking about our 2019 ozone plan. I've been up here a few times before talking about ozone plans, and this is an exciting one to talk to you about. I'm going to first discuss the state ozone planning requirements, and I'm going to ask a presentation to be put up on the board. Thank you. So I'll talk about ozone planning requirements. Tim and I are both going to briefly review the plan contents chapter by chapter, and then we'll discuss the review process with the district's Community Advisory Council. So there are really 10 slides with content in the presentation, and we'll get going. The California Clean Air Act of 1988 set up a process whereby the California Air Resources Board made initial designations for ozone for each air district in California, and set up a planning process for all the non-attainment areas to attain the ozone standard by the earliest practicable date. The district was designated non-attainment for the state ozone standard at that time. The district's first attainment plan was adopted by our board in 1991, and since then the district has adopted the plan revisions 8 times. This 2019 ozone plan will be the 9th update. Each time we update the plan, we provide new information on the ozone trends in the region, as well as many updates to the inventory of ozone precursor emissions, and we do this to assess the overall effectiveness of our program. We also provide a summary of the control measures that have been implemented in the past, and we reevaluate our strategy of measures to further reduce emissions and ultimately to meet our goal of attaining and maintaining the standard. Here's the contents of the plan. Chapter 1 provides an introduction. Chapter 2 discusses air quality trends. Chapter 3 includes the emission inventory. Chapter 4 is the stationary source control measures. Those are the ones that our district implements. Chapter 5 presents transportation control measures. We work with SBCAG on those. Chapter 6 is a new chapter we've included in this plan. It discusses our voluntary incentive strategies. And Chapter 7, again, is another new chapter where we addressed our maintenance strategy, now that we're really pretty much attaining the standard. So, Chapter 1. Chapter 1 provides information on our current designations for both the federal and the state ozone standards. This slide is the same information as in Table 1-1 of the plan. It indicates that air quality standards have been tightened over time, and that we currently attain the federal ozone standard. You see at the top. I'm sorry, I'm not sure why the presentation's not up. But this is also in your, yeah, there you go. So there's also, just want to point out, there's 2 state standards for ozone, and we have to attain both in order to be designated attainment. There's the 1-hour standard that came about in 1988, and then an 8-hour standard was also added in 2005. So we're currently designated non-attainment transitional until that final action happens that Aaron mentioned earlier. So even though the CAR board took action to change that, we expect it to be finalized in 2020, and that's why our plan still says we're non-attainment transitional. Now I've given some background on the plan process. Tim is going to talk to you through chapters 2 through 5 of the plan, and then I'll come back for 6 and 7.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Molly. So one of the most important trends to evaluate is the number of exceedances at our monitoring sites over the years. So on this chart, we've shown the state 8-hour and 1-hour exceedances in the vertical blue bars. Back in the early 90s, we were having over 100 exceedances of the state 8-hour ozone standard. But as new rules have been adopted and emissions have been ratcheted down over the years, we've seen the trend decline all the way to all the way to 2018, where we had 0 exceedances in that year. So all of this occurred while the county population has increased by over 20%. In this chapter, we also discuss our attainment status and show that there have been no violations of the ozone standard in the last 3 years.
Madam Chair.
We have a question, Director Lavanino.
Just so I know population went up 20%. I saw somewhere where it said over that period of time, too, vehicle miles traveled had gone up like 100%. What's the number on that?
So in Chapter 5, we do have a graph of the vehicle miles traveled. And so it all kind of depends on what is the year you're looking at in reference.
Okay, thanks.
Because there were increases in certain years.
Okay.
So, all right. So now ozone is not emitted directly into the atmosphere. It is formed through a series of complex chemical reactions involving the precursor pollutants of ROC and NOx as they react in the presence of sunlight. Chapter 3 of the plan covers the emission inventory for these pollutants, and the inventory is broken down into 4 main major categories: the stationary sources, area-wide sources, on-road vehicles, and other mobile sources. The total ROC and NOx emissions from all of these processes were calculated for the base year of 2017, which is the most recently reviewed and thoroughly vetted inventory year. And by using an emission forecasting tool from the California Air Resources Board, we are able to show the projected emission inventory for the future years. For the next 15 years, ROC emissions are projected to remain fairly constant, but the NOx emissions may grow due to the marine shipping sector. More container ships and tankers are anticipated to travel to the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, and as these ships continue to use high-polluting engines, there'll be more emissions in our area. So the international regulations are in place to slowly phase out the older, dirty engines, but in the meantime, the district is still committed to reducing emissions in this sector through our vessel speed reduction program. So going on to Chapter 4, the stationary source control measures. Since the district has been non-attainment for ozone, we have had a mandate from the California Health and Safety Code to adopt every feasible measure on an expeditious schedule. This has resulted in the district adopting over 25 control measures over the last 25 years since the original 1991 Clean Air Plan. For the 2019 plan, we analyzed if there were any potential new rules that are feasible to adopt. To do this, we did a comparison of our rules versus those in other air districts. We looked at the magnitude of the emission reductions and looked at the cost and cost effectiveness of any new rules. Based on our analysis, the district recommends no new stationary source measures for the 2019 plan, since no additional reductions are needed at this time to attain or maintain the standard. So that summarizes the Chapter 4 text. As for Chapter 5 of the plan, that focuses on the transportation control measures, which SB-CAG develops. In general, TCMs reduce traffic congestion and vehicle miles traveled, thereby reducing on-road emissions. Some example TCMs include traffic flow improvements and bicycle and pedestrian programs. For the 2019 plan, SB-CAG did not propose any new TCMs, but they will continue tracking and implementing the existing TCMs to help achieve emission reductions.
Great, thank you, Tim. I'm going to follow up with Chapter 6. It's a new chapter we added to the 2019 plan, and it provides a summary of the district's voluntary incentive strategies that complement our regulatory program and help us achieve our clean air and community health goals. Our grant programs leverage state and local funds to retrofit or replace higher emitting equipment, including agricultural engines, school buses, marine vessels, off-road equipment such as tractors and construction equipment, and we also do alternative fuel infrastructure grants. We've also implemented a vessel speed reduction program, an old car buyback program, a wood stove change-out program, and we're planning to undertake a LEAF program, as was decided today at the meeting. These programs are all voluntary and seek to reduce emissions in categories that aren't currently required to reduce emissions, or they're not currently regulated. Our grant programs are done annually, generally through a call for projects. Our 2018 Clean Air Grants program included 21 projects that used about $1.8 million in funds and provided about 115 tons of emission reductions for an overall cost effectiveness of around $15,000 per ton. That's well below our cost effectiveness thresholds of $30,000. For the 2019 Clean Air Grants process that's currently underway, we kicked off in August. We're looking to spend even more money, about $2.5 million, and do closer to 30 grant projects. Another new section was added to the 2019 plan, and that's a discussion of our strategy to maintain the ozone standard, knowing that our measured levels are now below the standard. Chapter 7 acknowledges our core existing programs, including stationary source regulations and permits, compliance inspections, emissions tracking, review of new land use projects, continued implementation of the transportation control measures, and also the voluntary incentive programs I just discussed that we included in Chapter 6, as well as public awareness and education. These programs have gotten us to where we are now, and we will continue our diligence in implementing them to provide a margin of safety and avoid a situation where we backslide and go back into being non-attainment for ozone. Definitely don't want that. The Community Advisory Council review process. So as part of the plan development process, as we always do, our staff met with the Community Advisory Council, this time on 2 occasions, to discuss the 2019 plan. We met in August to review the data that was compiled and to discuss our strategy for this plan with the group. And then again in October we met and we presented a draft of the plan for review and comment. We received numerous comments and questions from CAC members, and that resulted in revisions and clarifications to the plan that's before you here today. The questions, district responses, and revisions to the plan are all included in your board packet. At the October 23rd CAC meeting, they unanimously recommended board approval of the 2019 plan. So today, the board actions that are recommended include the following: to adopt the resolution, which is provided as attachment A, and that resolution includes a CEQA addendum with the 2010 Clean Air Plan EIR, CEQA findings, and the 2019 ozone plan itself. We also recommend that your board authorize the Air Pollution Control Officer to transmit the plan to the California Air Resources Board. That's it for our presentation.
Thank you. Are there
answer
questions for Ms. Pearson or Mr. Mitro? Director Hartman?
The county and a number of cities have joined up with Monterey Bay Clean Power, and over time, part of those, there will be a fund for possibly electric vehicle purchases. So anyway, I just encourage you to be in contact with them.
Yeah, that's a great point. Rich Stedman, who actually used to work at Santa Barbara Air Pollution Control District and now heads up that air district for the region, and he's on the board for this Monterey Bay Electric Consortium. So he's been supporting the use of those mitigation funds, and the more and more we have our cities and county involved, I'll make sure that I work with them to earmark funds down here as well.
Any other questions? I see we have a public commenter in Santa Barbara. Questions from the board?
I have another question.
Go ahead, please.
So figure 3.6 in the ozone report, and it's the NOx emission trends by source category. So how do we get into attainment when everything seems to be coming down a little bit, but marine, it looks like first off that marine vessels account for like 90% of our NOx. And we don't control those. I mean, I know we have a program to try and limit their speed and reduce emissions, but how does that all pencil out?
Correct. So we have onshore had a lot of emission reductions over time. So if you look at the other lines of the stationary sources, the on-road mobile and other mobile, since 2001, those have definitely decreased due to the onshore regulations.
So we've got those down to about zero almost.
So
it
those
looks like.
have
Yeah.
reduced. Now, NOx emissions from marine sector still is large, and it is still anticipated to grow. We do know that some of the emissions do affect onshore, but sometimes that can be dispersed and go offshore as well. So this is just all the emissions that are directly being emitted within our county boundaries, but not all of it will actually come to our monitoring stations.
So is there anything in the long range that's looking technology-wise that marine vessels just seem to be, I mean, when I'm looking at some of these numbers, they're just like unbelievably outweighing, like the emissions by source category with NOx, 51.87 when I think the entire oil and gas production is 3. So it's a magnitude of unbelievable proportions. So is there technology out there that we're waiting for that at some point they're going to run cleaner, or is this just something we're going to be living with for the rest of our lives?
You're probably not going to electrify a lot of these large container
I didn't think they were going to electrify them, but I'm hoping there's something different. The long extension cord back to China.
So,
yeah, nuclear.
Yeah, there are international regulations underway to phase out a lot of the older engines. So a lot of them are just at the Tier 1 standard, and all brand new engines or brand new ships being built today have to use the Tier 3 standard, which is going to have about 80% less NOx for the ships. But in the same regard, we can't just say you can't stop using all the old
Right.
vessels. You have to wait for some of them to naturally decay and then be replaced with the newer equipment.
Just seeing with the values that are here, if there was, I'm into incentivizing people, so I know those are super expensive engines, but that seems to be where the problem is.
Definitely. And, we have a lot of information over the years that we've been able to participate and assess the impacts of the vessel speed reduction program. We have a lot more information on the emissions that are actually coming from those vessels and frequenting our coast. And we actually have some concerns with the way that CARB is calculating the emissions within that category, and we're working with them, trying to better refine the actual emissions. They're from these large categories, there's not a lot of science out there, and I think as far as agencies' involvement in looking at the fine details, we're ahead of other air districts there for sure. So the more we can work with CARB on the information we have to further refine the emissions estimates, I think we're going to get a better reflection of the overall impact. But still, as you say, we need to go after reductions here, and that's why SB 69 and other pieces of legislation in California to secure a long-term funding mechanism to reduce provide incentives to reduce the speed is a huge benefit off our coast, and Ventura as well. They're on the cusp of non-attainment or trying to get attainment of the federal standard. So they have a huge priority to continue what we've been able to accomplish through that incentive program.
Any other questions before we go to public comment? Mr. Moldaver, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the Vice Chairman of the Advisory Committee, I want to confirm what Director Janae just reported to you, that we met twice in late summer and early fall, that we voted unanimously to recommend the new plan. I would also like to take a moment, since you've just seen abbreviated presentations by Tim and Molly, that there were a number of questions from the regulated community and by various members of the advisory committee. And at the October meeting, the staff responded in specific detail to answer every question that had been put forward. And in some cases, they answered questions that were in the record where the questioner was not able to attend. This is how seriously the district staff takes input from the regulated business community and from the public at large. So I wanted to acknowledge what Tim and Molly and Aaron and the other members of their team did. Finally, I'd like to also go to what Supervisor Lavanino indicated, and it's a top priority for the International Maritime Association to swap out their older vessels, their older engines, and their crude, what they call bunker oil, which is very polluting, as quickly as possible. They're not only getting nudged in that direction to expedite by the United Nations panel on climate change, but U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, who's also the head of NOAA, representing the United States in the negotiations with Secretary Pompeo, brings this up at every meeting. And I'm really hoping that 5 years from now, when your successors are having this kind of a meeting, that your staff will be able to report that there's a visible, significant reduction in that trend line, and that downward slope of offshore pollutants coming onshore and causing more regulations and costs for onshore regulated industries will be getting smaller and smaller and smaller with every year as the years go by. Because there are a lot of people in Washington and around the world and in California who are working on this one issue nonstop, and I think they're beginning to make some headway. And finally, I want to thank each of you for your service for local government and wish you safe, healthy holidays and a very safe, happy new year. Thank you.
Same to you, Mr. Moldaver. Thank you very much. Director Hart?
Yeah, I just want to thank Mr. Moldaver for drawing our attention to the questions and answers that staff provided to the comments from the advisory committee. They were extremely thorough and really spot on, and I know that takes a lot of time to get that level of detail, but the precision does provide a great deal of confidence from people who are participating in the process to see that. And one of the things that stuck out to me was in regards to the offshore emissions in the vessels, that the shipbuilders had built or anticipated the regulatory change to the Tier 3 engines and laid keels for 6 to 10 years worth of ships going into the future to avoid the need to install those engines. And that's very frustrating to think about, that level of sophistication to try and get around these regulations, considering how long those ships will be out working on the ocean.
Mr. Hart, while you have the floor, we do need a motion. We've held our hearing. The resolution would move this forward. We would adopt the CEQA findings. We would adopt the 2019 ozone plan, and we'd authorize our control officer to take the plan to state authorities.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you.
Second.
And a second from Director Hartman. More discussion or comments? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That was unanimous. Thank you so much, staff, for your hard work on that. A lot of compliments to you. We're doing our best, aren't we? Now we go to announcements. This meeting will be rebroadcast on county TV. Don't miss it over your holiday season. You can watch the rerun. And our next meeting is January 16th in 2020. Anything else, ma'am? I'll just sign off and wish everybody a safe holiday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.